I mean, what's the last Kia commercial you saw? And can you tell me what the model was that they were featuring? Absolutely not. And you're not even aware it's Kia, right? Like this is the problem. So you're trying to teach them advertising.
All I think of is really cool drone footage.
All of them have really cool drone footage. That's the thing. It's like it becomes like real estate videos. It's like so. Part of the problem was thinking it was tiresome trying to educate clients about advertising when it was not their strong suit. But as business owners, they want to have their hand in the business. They just didn't know how to get away from it. So we started working on some stuff. We were looking at doing kind of a high risk ad agency where we basically just tell people to like, this is what you need. I don't care if it's what you want. Like this is going to make you millions. So shut up and just do it.
Okay.
Because the thing is like, I mean, I'm an expert. Once you master a craft, you're like, this is what I'm really good at. You don't want people being like, I don't know anything about it and I'm going to just pull it apart. Like it just takes so much of your time, and
sure.
you watch that dollar amount just drain and drain and drain, and small businesses aren't spending a ton of money. So we were getting together to brainstorm an agency that would remove all of this barrier for people, that we wouldn't even that clients wouldn't have to worry themselves about it. They would just say, "Here's my business objective, make me money." And I'm seeing agencies pop up like that. There's a company that scaled. One firm from $2 million in sales to a year, $2 million a year in sales to $24 million a year in sales.
Nice.
Just through videos that were done incrementally through market automation.
And market automation, yes.
See, we're getting all the way back to that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sell you on marketing automation, but
I want to learn more about it.
It's we'll get into it. I mean, it really did change my business and how I do it. But the thing with Sage Media was more like we got together and we're working on a project. Some client said, "Hey, I have a training film. Have you done those before?" And we're like, "No, but it's not that hard to figure out." We did it, and the results were ridiculous. Like the amount of change, and they were like, "This is like watching a movie." And we're like, "Well, isn't this how they're done?" Like I hadn't really been familiar with
Oh, nice.
So they're like, "No, this is what we had like 3 years ago." And you're watching
Usually
they're
cheesy.
Oh my God, they're terrible.
Yeah.
and like legal has a whole thing, and part of it is because the training teams and the legal team believes that the way people learn is to tell them what they need to know. And that's not how this works. And in film, it's all about what's not being said. It's between the lines. It's subtext. So Walter White having an exchange with Skylar is a very different interaction from him.
They really sold. I wonder how many increases of meth dealers happened because of Breaking Bad.
Or how many of them are now like following protocol.
Yeah.
But it's really,
that's how powerful it is. I really had that like belief, like this is, that's going to have some, residual effects, like, and maybe it's going to even like see some kids that are in it, maybe watch that and want to be a Hank or something, like I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the truth is, it's aligned to their moral code, so they'll go to their respective places.
Yes. And that's what you do. Instead of focusing on the styles, that helps people align to their own moral codes within the videos you create.
Right. So I compare it to like if you want to learn a language, I can tell you all of the conditions that will optimize your chances of success. Right. But if you're just like, well, I do it an hour before I go to bed, that's not enough than doing these other things, listening to programs in that language, or communicating with people, or labeling things, or going about your day, like just naming different things in your head, getting that to be autonomic. So because the trick with learning is you have to get your brain out of the way. Consciousness interferes with learning. So the more you can make it rote and autonomic, like an athlete does on the field, they're not thinking.
Well, the
about
more
the
you
play.
do it, the more it becomes autonomic.
Yeah.
That actually, like you can see that visually in the brain, I think.
Yes, and it moves. It physically moves in the brain. You can when you're watching the activity. Ooh. So you can, because it's less significant that you pay attention. But if you're thinking about translating, like I constantly have to be like, what is cup in Japanese?
Yeah,
happens to be really easy. Japanese, but
is it kupo?
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
Kopu.
Was I right? Really?
Yes.
I know some of the. Well, that was a pretty good guess, dude. Yeah. I know some Japanese words. I think there's a name for it when words hadn't been created or like they don't translate really.
Katakana.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a written language just for foreign words. And they use it in advertising now to be like, it's chic, it's sexy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically, like I'm trying to get people to shut off their brains in that context, and so we didn't know that at the time we did the first training film.
I'm gonna hit that real quick.
Yeah, no, fine. No,
all right, where were we at?
I think it was just like about like forming the business. The bottom line was like after the training film, and the success of it, it started to spread, and I started researching more about well, what's wrong with training films? Why are they like this? Why do they look like this? Why are they acted like this? And I came to find that the training industry globally spends $300 billion a year, and only 10% of training is effective. And you tell that to a person who's chief learning officer, head of learning, they're like, oh yeah, I know that. I'm like, you're okay with this? Like,
I did some studies on the training stuff, and although that may be, there's obviously you are just innovating on the platform. When training videos like actually happened, like I know Microsoft started doing training videos. They went from like putting all their employees, like have them come to a space and all that stuff, and they saved like millions of dollars every single year. But you're saying that they could save millions more.
Yeah, I mean,
or make million more. That's the goal of it. Training videos to make better employees.
They should make more money for you. Yeah. Well, and everyone's terrified to find out if it's working. And executives want to know, but if you talk to HR and about learning analytics, they're terrified of it. I think partly because they were worried that if it comes back negative, that somehow they'll lose their job, and that's not how people work. I mean, maybe it's worked for them, and if that's so, then you're in a toxic culture and you need to get out. But generally, I want to know if it's working.
Yeah.
So we always do a deep dive.
You got to know your numbers. That's a big part of automation.
Yeah.
Is knowing your numbers.
Yeah. I mean, and so like when my business partner is Kirkpatrick certified. So we go through from the very beginning and say, like, does this actually change behavior on the plant floor? Or does this change behavior in the office? And we know because we'll have criteria.
Is Kirkpatrick a cognitive?
It's
thing?
not. It's more of an investigative tool, kind of like, XAPI XAPI is more data driven on that reflection, but it's still like you have to sort the data. It's a framework like Bloom's taxonomy. There are different ones, and even though these don't have, again,
you said like 3 different words that I've never heard before.
So Bloom's taxonomy is like a 6-part series that essentially organizes how people have information from like they recall it to they are synthesizing it. So I teach you a creative writing technique, and then you're able to apply it to a history paper or your cover letter. It's not creative writing, but you've taken principles of it and synthesized it into something new. Now, the critique of Bloom's taxonomy and a lot of these frameworks is that they're not scientifically vetted. But to my response, neither was AA. And AA works wonders for millions of people every year because it's experiential. So similarly, like just because it's not been vetted scientifically doesn't mean you throw it out. So Kirkpatrick is another one of those that says, did people like the training? Did they remember the training? Do they recall the training? In the field, and have they actually changed the behavior? Sorry, I skipped this. So there was the liked, recall, perform, and then like have the outcome. So like you have these like 4 different iterations. So my business partner is certified in that, and we use that framework when we're going through and actually talking through a training, which is, ultimately what do you want it to do? I can't tell you how many people they'll come and say, well, I want my learners to understand the importance of, and it's like, blah, blah. Okay. Like how do you measure understanding? And what do you determine as the metric of importance? Like it's immeasurable.
So what's the underlying problem they're solving if they say that, or wanting to solve actually?
So it's varied. It's all over the place. I think most of the time they don't know how to clarify what it is that's problematic or what behavior and what action and outcome would prove that the training was effective. They don't want it. It's hard to think that way. And really just because they're like, I don't know, I'm familiar with, I want them to understand the importance of, okay, but what does that look like?
I think someone, a friend, maybe even a mutual friend, she does kind of like what you do, but she's more in person. It's not a video automation. It's more of like because I was just thinking as you were explaining your business, I was like, what if some businesses hire psychologists to come in and really diagnose those problems?
Yeah.
Or maybe you could work together with them to create films based on that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is because a lot of times the psychologists have one element of it, but they don't have the application, especially with regard to media. I mean, I was even watching some of the Harmon brothers, the guys that did the Squatty Potty and the Poopery commercials, and they've got a learning academy, and it's awful.
Oh, really? Because they've been promoting it to me hardcore.
You watch it, and the guy's presenting, and I think it's green screened because it looks green screened, and behind him is a window, and people are moving around like poking each other and doing this weird shit, and you're like, I can't pay attention to anything he's saying because there's all this cognitive load, there's all this demand on my mental RAM that I'm like forgetting what he's saying. It's a terrible idea. Like minimize the distractions, minimize the focus. Don't have all these flashy graphics popping up because again, they chip away at that RAM.
What they were doing was what they did best and applying it to a learning thing, which is what you do best.
Right. And this happens all the time. Donald Miller's another one. Donald Miller has great stuff when you want to talk to him about small business marketing. The minute he opens his mouth about corporate training, you're like, dude, you're in over your head.
Yeah.
And so I see this a lot with companies trying to pivot. And so for us, it was about, this is a lifelong investment. I've always felt that storytelling enriched people's lives.
Donald Miller is
he's creeping into corporate learning.
Who's that?
The story brand guy.
That's what I thought. When you said that, yeah. Okay, yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off. But
you're fine.
My brain was like, I know that name.
Well, and
I read that book.
I used to subscribe to his stuff, and then I got a video that was like, when should you fire somebody? And I was like, oh God, every red flag came out of his mouth, and I was like, this is a liability, buddy. Like, stop talking.
Yeah.
Like, just do what you do really well. This is not your foray. But that's unfortunate because people think it's easy because people spend a lot of money in the corporate sphere and because there's a high demand. But again, if only 10% is effective, is that saying that they just don't care for it to be more effective, or is that saying that there is something systemically wrong with the way training is being done? And we're still kind of piecing it out. And I think it's going to shift. I think as people are staying home more, as people are following their own learning trajectories, you're going to get a lot more demand. I'm already seeing it that doing Zoom calls with your phone or doing online learning with your phone and crappier cameras is no longer cutting it. People, since COVID, the demand for aesthetics in learning has skyrocketed.
Okay.
And it's huge. So it's something I would just like offer.
I could imagine, like how...
This is a show where we have real conversations with the business owners and entrepreneurs here in Colorado Springs, doing things in the community of Colorado Springs.